the carbon-14, because carbon is the most important element in biological molecules, carbon-14 made it possible to do tracer work, and that caused the explosion that we now know of as modern biochemistry. Raymond was fortunate to discover the element.
Without going into a whole other segment related to carbon, can you explain to me what carbon dioxide or CO2 is? And is
it's a dimer. It's a molecule. Carbon dioxide it has two oxygen atoms and a carbon. A carbon atom with an oxygen atom bound to each side of it is carbon dioxide. It is one of the three most important molecules that makes life possible: water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the source of all carbon in all living things. It is inhaled by plants, and plants use it to build all of their tissues, and then animals eat those plants, and so all animal tissue is built of it. Humans, when they burn food, all animals, when they burn food, they burn it with oxygen, so it's just like you use in a fire, except it's a controlled burning biochemically. And so the oxygen and the food molecules they have are burned, and carbon dioxide is a byproduct. Carbon dioxide is produced by animals in burning their food and then inhaled by plants, which make it back into food. So there are three substances without which no life on Earth would be possible: water, oxygen, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the source of all carbon in all living things. And the idea that it's a pollutant is just a bad joke.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. I figured since we were talking about, you had mentioned your associate was the discovered carbon-14.
Well,
I just thought I would ask you about carbon because it's the basis, as you know, for an entire new industrial complex of, everything else, which I haven't heard you talk about, but I am familiar that you have been talking about it on a separate level. I don't want to diffuse this conversation, but I wanted, as a scientist, for you to articulate what carbon is and what carbon isn't.
You got it. I'll stay away from global warming.
Yeah, no problem. It's not a problem. I just don't want to mix the conversation. But is there anything else you'd like to say as a scientist about carbon dioxide?
Well, now you've opened it, right?
I can't help myself. We're here. We're at the juncture.
Well, one of our websites lists what 32,000 scientists want to say about it. We, because of this growing demonization of carbon dioxide, we became alarmed and decided that we should do something to help. And we studied the subject very carefully and wrote 2 review articles about it and circulated a petition among American scientists. The petition is to the U.S. government, and it says that there is no convincing scientific evidence that carbon dioxide or the burning of hydrocarbon fuels is harming the climate, and that in fact this extra production of carbon dioxide is good because it stimulates the growth of plants and animals. This is completely opposite to the government's point of view. Anyway, we circulated this petition among scientists in the United States, and 32,000 of our colleagues signed up, including a lot of famous people. This has been a terrible thorn in the side of those who want to build an anti-carbon industry, and most recently it was discussed at the presidential news conference on Monday. The President Obama's news secretary, Mr. Gibbs, told the conference that Carol Browner at the EPA had thousands of scientists who agreed with the government's position. And one of the reporters said, well, but what about the 31,000 scientists that these guys in Oregon signed up that are against that position? So it's a political football.
My question to you is, when the average person looks out at the world and sees traditional pollution, like what you would see by the human eye, like stuff spewing out of oil companies or stuff spewing out of whatever other kind of companies, plants, manufacturing plants, stuff spewing into the air, the average person is startled and upset because they know that something, we don't know what it is some type of chemicals, synthetic chemicals or something is going into the atmosphere. Now I've done 2 segments already on climate and weather, but there's so many factors and that have been left out of the entire plate of the climate and weather dialogue that it's preposterous. But my question to you is, how do you address the average person who says, look, I'm just committed that pollution stop. There are a lot of companies that do pollute and send polluting chemicals into the environment. Do you at least agree with that?
Oh, sure. I agree with them. I'm for stopping pollution, too. Tremendous strides have been made. There's always a problem because if your electricity coming out of your wall depends on burning coal, you have to be a little concerned about how fast you stop it, because if you shut off the coal plants, you have no electricity. On the other hand, you should work as hard as you can to stop the pollution produced by those plants. So I'm probably as strong as you are for stopping real pollution. The problem is the carbon dioxide is a colorless gas. They've never seen that coming out of a plant because you can't see it, and it's absolutely required for life. You have to be careful about what you call as a pollutant. If carbon dioxide is a pollutant, water's a pollutant, and oxygen's a pollutant. Where do we stop? All chemicals are pollutants. You see, this is wrong. This is just taking advantage of ignorant people and telling them that basically not just that the air they breathe, they're being told that the air they breathe is being polluted. But in this case, you're saying that the very air is a pollutant, because carbon dioxide, oxygen, and water are the molecules required for life, and they are the essential components of air. Carbon dioxide is simply not a pollutant. Now, what they've done is to say, yes, but it's increased a little, and that is causing global warming. But that, in fact, is not true. There's no evidence for that. It's a myth. So they're being fooled. And they're being fooled by people who just want to make a lot of money and get power over them, not by people who want to do them any good. Carbon dioxide is not something they can see. It's produced by everything. In fact, it's produced by them. I'm sitting in this office talking to you, and as a result, the carbon dioxide in this office is probably twice the concentration it is outside, because I'm breathing it out all the time. And the trees outside are going to breathe it in and grow with it.
So it's everywhere.
Just because it's produced in the process of living, every living thing exhales it, and produced also in the process of making energy, doesn't make it a pollutant. The things you see belching out of a smokestack are things that none of us want to breathe, and I agree with great advances in technology to stop that.
I wanted to ask you.
Point I might make, and
yes.
That is, you wouldn't have any of those smokestacks, at least from the coal-fired power plants, if the government hadn't stopped the development of nuclear power in this country, which doesn't produce any smoke.
You know what? I will tell you, and again, I'm one of these people that am scared of nuclear. I am, but I'm scared out of what I've heard about it, not what I know about it.
That's exactly right. And that's everybody that's scared of it is because they've heard things about it that aren't true, but they don't know. You've heard that it causes terrible pollution, dangerous pollution. But in fact, it doesn't cause any pollution if you allow the plants to recycle the fuel. France makes all of its electricity with nuclear power and has no nuclear waste problem because they simply recycle the fuel. Now,
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
And the Bush administration was in the process of making possible the building of a recycling plant in the United States. But the Obama administration canceled the plant, so it's not going to be built. Nuclear waste is simply a product of government regulation that prevents the recycling of the fuel. If we had a government law to prevent the recycling of pop cans, then we'd have a pop can pollution problem too.
So, for example, images of Chernobyl, that's what I remember as a younger person.
Right.
Every time I think nuclear, I think